What's up, everybody? Welcome to Down and Dirty with Michael Julian. I'm your host, Michael Julian, and on this show, we're getting raw, real, and leaving no stone unturned. Each week, I sit down with some truly remarkable people who have overcome immense challenges and adversity in their lives. Whether it was childhood trauma, discrimination, mental health struggles, or any other obstacle thrown their way, my guests aren't just survivors, they're warriors who took their pain and turned it into power. They'll share their unfiltered stories and the life lessons that helped shape them into the forces they are today. So get comfortable because we're about to get down and dirty. You'll hear firsthand how our darkest moments can unexpectedly light the path towards our greatest growth and success. Let's dive in and prepare to feel inspired. So, my friend, Jerry Hang, how are you, buddy?
Good, MJ.
Yeah, very happy to have you here today.
I'm happy to be here.
This worked out really well because you're here for the ATAP conference, which is the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, of which I've been a member of for years. And I was a member for years and then finally started going to the conferences and absolutely regret not going the entire time I was a member because it's fantastic. And this is your first ATAP conference.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, to give you an idea of what you're in for, not that this is saying much, but when I go every year, it doesn't matter what conversation I'm in. I'm the dumbest person in that conversation, which is pretty easy, but still, in our circle, at least I'm relatively. Those people are so cranial and cerebral, and incredibly intelligent and highly educated, unlike ourselves. So I mostly sit there and listen, and it's a good thing. So you're going to be in Anaheim at the ATAP conference today, tomorrow, and a little bit for Thursday, and you're headed home.
That's right.
Yeah, well, good. Well, this worked out really well. I'm excited to have you on the show for a couple reasons. One, I've known you for 21 years. I like you because you're a super nice, likable guy. But also because you're one of the show's sponsors, which I appreciate very much. And I'm not wearing the shirt because you're a sponsor. I'm wearing the shirt because I am an EPI graduate. We'll get into that later. But right now, I would like my audience to know who and what and where, why, and how that is the man that is Jerry Hang.
Well, I'm a pretty simple guy. I actually grew up in California.
Yep.
Sonoma County. Then I moved in high school. I moved down to San Diego area, Imperial Beach, graduated Chula Vista.
Yeah.
Eventually found myself up in Lake Tahoe area, became a hippie ski bum.
A hippie ski bum in the Tahoe area. That doesn't sound like a really bad way to grow up. How old were you then at about that time?
Yeah, 20, 21. What happened in high school was Vietnam time. I'm a military brat. My father was...
Can I ask how old you are?
71.
Really? Well, Good for you. You look great.
I feel good.
You should. You're very active, so that makes sense.
But my dad was, Air Force, retired. When I was growing up, I had rheumatic fever, ended up having a heart murmur, and I was told that I would be 4F. So I waited for the draft. My number was like 268. They were only taking 163 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't join the military. Was patriotic. Was not,
You weren't trying to dodge.
No. In fact, I waited, but I was told I would probably be denied. Years later, they said I probably could have joined up, but
because of the murmur.
Right.
Okay.
And I had rheumatic fever, and they said those were two disqualifiers. So found myself in Lake Tahoe and became a hippie ski bum. And I guess before Tahoe was a hippie, long hair and So
were you into the Grateful Dead?
Believe it or not, no. I was a trumpet player, and so I was into Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and things like that. I remember in high school I discovered a Who album, and I was telling everybody how great the Who was, and everyone was like, "Jerry, we know who the Who is."
But it was new to you.
Yeah, it was because I was into jazz and
11-piece bands like Chicago. Yeah, yeah.
So it was in Tahoe and became a bit of a ski bum. Found my way out to New York. A bunch of folks said, "Hey, we're going to New York," and I thought, "No, let me go out there." And end up finding a job on an estate because of my construction background. Was managing an estate for a prominent individual, a wealthy, prominent, and I was intrigued by that. And then end up managing a high-rise building in Manhattan that had a security department that I began to oversee. And then I basically transitioned from construction and property management into security management. So
that is that. Well, the management part was really good experience. So give us some context for timing. This is the 70s, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay, so the 70s. You're in your 20s. You're a hippie ski bum, which I love that you give yourself that little moniker. You're doing some estate management.
Let me tell you how I got that moniker.
Okay.
Started going to ASIS meetings in New York City, security management. And at that time, they would often ask everybody to stand up and introduce themselves. So the majority of people were either particularly former NYPD,
sure,
but former law enforcement, a little bit of military. It was very rare to have anybody that didn't have those.
Sure.
So it was kind of awkward to introduce myself. I wasn't a former something. And I decided one day, I stood up and I said, I am a former hippie ski bum. And the person next to me asked his partner next to him, he said, does NYPD have a ski bum division? Because it was almost like you had to be former NYPD.
Yeah, that was a special task force.
I did auxiliary for a while. I was a sergeant in Midtown South. And Midtown South is interesting. It's the world's largest police precinct.
Yeah.
4.5 million to 5 million people come in a day and leave a day.
Jesus.
And there's only about 100,000 residents there.
Yeah.
And I was, a patrol sergeant with the auxiliaries, patrolling. But it became kind of my stick that I was a former hippie ski bum. But also I do that, try to keep myself humble too.
Yeah.
I try to remind myself, because sometimes people say, oh, here's, Jerry Hine, and I'm like, look, I'm a C- high school graduate, former hippie ski bum,
Yeah. Well, that's kind of cool because the opposite are the guys that are trying to project themselves as something that they're not. And we have a lot of those in our industry, unfortunately. And of course, Dr. Kovich would be proud because he didn't care for egos. And that's a strength for guys like you that refuse to throw that ego out there. In fact, you're to some degree self-deprecating with the whole, I'm just a hippie ski bum. So that's very good.
When I introduced myself at each 7-day program, I mentioned that Doc, one of his things, he used to say, for the next 7 days, I want you to put your ego right outside the door.
Yes.
And on the way out, pick it up.
Yeah.
Well, I was a little cocky when I went through the program. I thought I was something special. I'd been around the world, worked on some big details.
How old were you when you went through?
I was 96. I'd have to do the math, but
in your 30s?
Yeah. And so, I really thought I was something. And one of Doc's sayings too that really resonated was, we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that I didn't know. And besides, I didn't know that I didn't know. I was pretty cocky.
Yeah.
And I was humbled at the 7-day program. Because I thought I was so special and knew everything. Mm-hmm. The first detail I went out on, I crashed and burned within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I got tripped up. I got stumbled. The instructor called and gathered everybody and said, let's take a time out. He said, Jerry, what the hell are you doing? And I was just beside myself. And I share that story because I want people to know in every program people come in, there's a lot of talent there.
Yeah.
I mean, Jerry Jacobs came in. He was a detail leader for the California governor.
Yep.
And he's a student.
Yeah.
But so I share that story to say, hey, no matter what experience you have, take it off, put the student and that ego story, the Doc, that was very humbling for me.
I can tell you that I have repeated that exact same story 100 times. In fact, probably twice on this very show, because I went through when I was 34 years old. That was like 21 years ago. And I had been doing EP for probably 15 years. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, let me go and sharpen up and learn the new stuff. And I thought I was pretty hot shit. And I'll tell you this. First of all, I remember sitting there on the first night. We have to wear our suits to the welcome reception. I'm thinking, damn, we got to put our suits on to go to a freaking reception before the thing even starts. And the first thing Doc said, he sat down, he said, all right, boys, he said that very same thing. You better leave your ego at the door, and you can take it back when you leave, but there's no place for it here. And in this industry, it will be your biggest foe. Like, you'll get in your own way. So I remember that. And then at the end of that 7-day course, I remember going, wow, I didn't know a damn thing about this industry. And my ego, though I don't know if I left it there, it was gone by the time I left that 7-day course. And that doing the overnight, the staying up for 2 days straight thing was probably the most tired I've ever been in my entire life. Because we had been doing long days. Then I don't sleep well in hotels. So by the time we did that overnight, I was absolutely destroyed. And guess what? I made it through. So I knew I could make it through if I ever needed to do that on the details. So that was an amazing experience. And part of the reason I was excited to have you on the show, and for context, so Doc Kovitz started in when?
1978.
78. Okay. And he was former Chicago PD, correct?
Right.
Okay. And there are some icons of our industry that have come out of that thing, that school. And then you went through it, you learned EP, or probably perfected, or at least got much better at it, because it's an amazing 7-day course. And then you came out of it. Now talk to us. And then we have to go back in time, because I want to talk about your origin story, which is you were adopted. Okay. And a big part of this show is about people that overcome adversity and things that might be challenges to some, but are just springboards and inspiration to others. So it's important that we talk about that. So for context, you give us a little bit more detail. You started, and when did you start your company?
1989.
In New York.
Right.
What took you from California or Tahoe to New York?
Like I said, some folks said, hey, we're going out to New York. And I had never been east of the Mississippi, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I thought, hey, go to New York. Here I am, a country bumpkin growing up in Sonoma County, Northern California, and then later in San Diego. But then I found myself in New York City, and it was fascinating. There was an old commercial, Listerine. They said, you love it and you hate it. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I was. I hated parts of New York. I got there in the mid 70s. There was trash, burned down cars. There was graffiti. There was con men. They were selling drugs. It really repelled me, but it was also fascinating.
Yeah. It was a total culture shock for you, because it was very different than California.
And I was delivering newspapers sometime in East Harlem and, the Empire State Building. And was fascinating for me. And really came to love New York. Again, certain parts of it. Now I moved to Westchester County, which is the next county north. Real nice area. We've lived there, 35 years or so. Both my kids went through elementary to high school in one school district, which was rare in my family, being my dad was former military, Air Force. My older sister went to 32 different schools from kindergarten to high school.
Because of being
traveling.
A military brat, yeah.
And then my dad retired when I was 5, and I went to one elementary, one middle school, then 2 high schools. So that wasn't much.
Not as bad.
Being adopted, I was adopted when I was 15 months old. Of course, I don't remember any of that. It was celebrated in my family. I was adopted right around my mom's birthday, which is August 5th. So when we had our birthdays, she would give me the first piece of her birthday cake. And on my birthday, I would give her the first piece of my birthday cake. So now I never had any issues about it. I didn't have any anxieties. I didn't have any qualms. I had 2 sisters and a brother. They're, my sisters and my brother, and my mom and dad are my mom and dad. Mm-hmm. I did eventually, a funny story, when I joined Facebook, it was around 2009, one of my first friends said, hey, I do genealogy as a hobby. Would you like me to do your chart? And I said, sure. So she presented it, and I said, yeah, that's everything I know about my family, being I'm adopted. She goes, oh, you're adopted. What do you know about your birth family? I said, well, I have my mother's maiden name, or my birth mother's name. Mm-hmm. Gave her to and the next day she shows me a chart. She says, Jerry, you have relatives in North Dakota.
Oh.
Now, here's a funny story. I'm a PI. I'm a private investigator. I would search every now and then. I would come up with names, but I thought, how do I connect the names with me? And one name always came up was Finn. And
Finn.
Finn.
F-I-N.
F-I-N-N.
N-N, okay. What's that, Irish?
Norwegian.
Oh, okay.
So I decided once she told me and I got this chart, I wrote a letter to my uncle. I said, you may not know this, but your sister had me in San Francisco. I was born in San Francisco, and put me up for adoption when I was about 11 months old. And I wrote this letter, sent it off. I kind of forgot about it, actually. And then one day my phone rang and I didn't recognize the number. I said, hello. He goes, hi, cousin.
That's how he opened the conversation.
My uncle's daughter called me.
Oh, right.
She said, you wrote my dad a letter. And she said, we didn't know about you.
Did
not know about you, but we're not surprised. 2 weeks ago, we got a letter from your sister.
Who you also didn't know, who was also given up for adoption? Holy cow.
Exactly.
That's 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks prior.
That's crazy.
They got a letter. And it turns out that my birth mother had a daughter that was immediately put up for adoption. And she had health issues and decided she wanted to find out about her birth blood family, to find out about medical so she could forewarn her kids. And she wrote a letter, and then through the adoption agency, the family said, we want to meet her. And so she had to finish paying. So while she was finishing paying, they got a letter from me. So within 2 weeks, 2 siblings contact, our birth family. And then it turned out that my birth mother eventually got married and had a boy, who's my half brother. Now, he was raised as an only child. My sister and I, we knew that we were adopted, and we knew that somewhere out in the universe we might have siblings or other relatives and things. But my half brother had no idea. So when he found out, it was complete shock. I have a brother and a sister, So
that's crazy.
Yeah, we called it the Summer of Wow when we all got together. All the different stories. My half sister's birthday is May 5th. My adopted sister's birthday was May 5th.
Wow.
So many parallels.
Yeah.
It really felt to me, I was the family I was adopted into was
the family you were supposed to be with?
Well designed. Yeah. I mean, and again, I don't have any anxieties about it. Now I do know, and like you bring up, that some people might. My philosophy is, you're your own self. You have to deal with whatever adversity or, I grew up an angry young man. I had anger issues.
I can relate to that.
I would get angry, and one time I punched out a car window, and then I drove myself to the hospital to have stitches in my arm and a cast and things like that. I had a temper. Now, years later, I started carrying a gun. You can't have a temper when you carry a gun. So I buried it. It's there. I can call upon it should I need it. Yeah. But I put it pretty far down. And that's one reason also I try to be very humble, very mellow. I got into positive thinking, which changed my life.
Oh, that's good stuff. I want to hear more about that.
My brother gave me a book called Think and Grow Rich.
the Bible of self-improvement and business. And isn't it amazing? I've probably read it 5 times, and I can't tell you how many of my guests have brought up that book as the book that changed their life.
And it's funny, in every class I teach, and I teach a lot of different classes. I teach corporate aircraft security. We teach a 2-day program on college campuses and police departments, the 7-day program. Almost every presentation I give, I have a slide in my Think and Grow Rich slide. It says, to be successful, you have to have positive thinking. Yep. To be successful in executive protection, to do anything. Now, with that background into positive thinking, I still had struggles. And a friend of mine said to me once, he said, Jerry, you just have to use mind over matter. Yeah. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Yeah. That changed my life again, because I realized we decide what matters. We decide. So if somebody says something to me, Jerry, you're ugly, I might say, no, I'm not. And then, but I realize I'm the one getting angry.
Yeah.
So if somebody said, hey, you're ugly. Okay, I'm ugly. So that's something that changed my life. That joke that was told to me, positive thinking, Think and Grow Rich. And I tell people that book absolutely changed my life.
100%.
Changed my life inside and out.
Yeah.
And one of the things inside that book, right inside the front cover, it says, not all riches are in money.
That's for sure.
I've been married 45 years. I have a loving relationship with my son and my daughter. We go on vacations, even now that they're older. We're close. I feel like I'm rich because of that. Yeah. I have a lovely wife, and we've had a long-term relationship. And at today's age, I feel that's successful.
Huge.
And so, beyond riches now, and believe it or not, I don't like to say it because I'm homo, but, recently sold my company and put some money away.
Congratulations on that, by the way. Was that was it the uniform and EP or just the uniform division?
Just the uniform.
Well, then congratulations on that, because you know what a nightmare the uniform security business is.
And I never intended to get into it. I got my license in '89. The intent was to do executive protection and special events, because that's kind of what I was geared for. In New York in 1992, they passed what was called the Guard Act of '92, requiring security to be trained, vetted, things like that. And a number of people knew I had my license. So they, said, hey, Jerry, we want you to do, our security. And so I thought, well, how hard could that be? I honestly started my company on credit cards. I didn't have any wherewithal, but I had a lot of credit cards with pretty good limits.
Yeah.
Started my company. It wasn't what I intended, but it gave me the basis for a lot of other things too. Pre-COVID, I had as many as 1,800 people, and post-COVID, I had 350. So now a lot of the 1,800
uniform guards.
Well, a lot of it was, we did special events in New York. We did concerts, Live Nation concerts.
They were on the books, but not working full time.
Right. I had about, I would probably have about 500 regular guards.
That's still a big force.
And then do special events. Well, April of 2019, all events stopped.
Yep.
So one third of my business just stopped.
Yep.
Now, fortunately, we were essential. We had contracts for FEMA. We did hospital security. We kept active. But when COVID was over and events started coming back, one problem was nobody wanted to work.
That's for sure.
I was turning work down. People would call. They would tell me, name your price.
Yeah.
We need this.
Yeah. Just so you know that I can completely relate. We couldn't get people to go to work. We lost $4 million in contracts that year alone, because who's gonna keep a company that can't fill posts?
I would never take on a contract or an assignment if I didn't know I couldn't fulfill it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't make a promise, even sometimes strike coverage, which I know you do. And sometimes in New York, a lot of strikes are settled at the last hour, the 11th hour.
Yep.
And you do a contingency. I would not take on more than I knew I could handle. Mm-hmm. Physically have people to go there. And even there, sometimes I would be requested to provide massive numbers of people. And I would say, I could only take on what I know I can handle, because I have integrity. I'm not going to take on something and then fall short of that.
And why set yourself up for failure? If you can't do it, it's only going to make you look bad, and that will affect your reputation moving forward.
That's right.
Well, that's great. Well, that's good stuff. So you sold your uniform division. With a force like that, you probably got a nice little chunk of change. I don't know what your multiplier was, but congratulations. In New York, it's probably huge. So your retirement's set. That's fantastic. Now let's go back. Let's go back to EPI. EPI is Executive Protection Institute.
Correct.
Been around for what, 50 years now?
1978.
Okay. And you were one of the instructors when I went through in 2003. And I stayed in touch with several of the instructors for many, many years. Anthony Christiana, unfortunately, we lost him. He was a wonderful man.
Sure.
Doc, we've lost. But what made you buy EPI?
Well, first of all, I went through in 96 and I was humbled. And I went to Doc after the program. I mean, probably he said, class dismissed. I went right up to him and said, Doc, I want to be a part of this. And I was humbled again because he looked at me and he said, who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
Like, which one of these fine instructors should I get rid of to make room for you?
Yeah. He was like that. He could be a little off-putting.
And I said, Doc, I'll hand out sandwiches. I'll sweep floors. I'll be a gopher. I want to be a part of this. Now, what was fortunate was besides the 2 7-days, Doc did a number of 2 or 3 days. He would go to Chicago. He would go to New York and Vegas and I think one other place. But he would host like a 2-day program and then maybe corporate aircraft security. Well, I knew that he was in New York because I'd met him there before. And actually, I met Doc in 1978 at a police conference because I was a member of the International Association Chiefs of Police because I did a lot of law enforcement liaison.
My father was a member of that. I've still got the original certificate on the wall downstairs. Very cool.
So I actually met him because I was a student of terrorism and I was studying, and he wrote a book called Target Terrorism, Providing Protective Services. He was in a number of other terrorism books by like Jenkins. And so I was absorbing that. But fortunately, getting back to, I had a training room and I said, Doc, I can host you in my training room and for free. And of course, if it was free, it was for me. I mean, Doc loved that idea. So I began hosting Doc every January in New York City. And I think out of pity, he said, do you want to teach a block or something like that? And so he gave me an opportunity that eventually led to, he invited me down to the 7-day and I became a regular instructor.
I got to ask, how much was the 7-day that long ago?
Oh gosh. 1900.
Was it that much?
Oh,
probably.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. That was a long time ago though. I think I paid $3,421 years ago.
Well, it's $39.90 now.
Well, that's not bad. Honestly, you might need to up your prices a bit because that's a lot of training for not a lot of money.
If you want your own room, it's a little bit more, but and that includes lodging and meals, things like that for that 7-day.
Yeah.
Well, it's competitive. We have to keep it. We price it reasonable. Now, one thing that EPI does that a lot of other schools don't, we bring in anywhere from 12 to 20 instructors.
Yes,
during
I
that
know.
7-day.
And
you've instructed there.
I have been an instructor there. Thank you for that, for giving me that opportunity. What is the average class size? I think we had, I want to say 48 people in my class, 55.
Yeah, your class 55.
Yeah.
The average over Doc's time period was about 32. My first, when I took over the ownership, the first 4 classes were in the 40s. We even had one class 55, I think. Right now, our last class is 32 students.
I think that's a good size.
Yeah.
We had a lot of, and we even had a couple of guys drop out because they just couldn't hang. But that's a lot of damn people. But I think we had, Sonny Burmeister.
I just met him recently. We did a program in Gretna. Is
he still alive?
Yes, he's in charge of the reserves there, and he still works for Jefferson Parish.
Yeah.
I met him. Jason DeMarco is now the deputy chief of Gretna. He's a NLA member, and he and I trained together. We were firearms instructors together. So we just did a 2-day program there, and some folks from Tulane came, and they were amazed with our program. We're probably going to do some custom programs for.
I would love to see Sonny again because I'm sure he won't remember me, but this is what I remember about Sonny. Besides him being an absolute monster of a human being, I remember he was doing a demonstration, and for whatever reason, probably because I was being a smart ass or something, he chose me to demonstrate on. And you probably can't even teach this or get away with it anymore, which is a shame because this is how it should be. And he says he's demonstrating on how to handle somebody that's, being mouthy or that might be a problem or whatever, and be real low key about it. So he says, okay, now you be the guy standing in line at the red carpet that's being too grabby or trying to grab, my principal's hand or something like that.
Sure.
And he says something like that. He says, I'm just going to say something. And you respond and you say, what was that? And he takes the back of his hand and smacks me in the neck and spins me around on my feet. Now, this guy's 6'6" or whatever he was at the time. Here I'm this little bitty 180 pound, 5'10". He spun me around and I thought, well, God damn. But you know what? I never forgot the lesson. I never forgot the experience. And he was such a nice guy to me after that. And it really kind of probably shut me up a little bit because who knows why I deserved that, but I probably did. But that's the kind of training that 7-day gives. And we had a real a practical exercise detail. I had Doc's daughter, actually. That was my principal, me and like 3 or 4 other guys. And you had some crazy, the principals had these crazy requests. We stopped somewhere and suddenly she needs this whatever obscure thing. And I'm running across the street from the restaurant we're at, going to every business trying to find it. And I finally found one, whatever the hell it was. But that was such a great experience. And I really, again, it taught me how much I don't know about this industry or I didn't know. It gave me so much of an appreciation and respect for the industry and humility and the fact that we're kind of a service industry.
Oh, absolutely.
Very rarely are we actually, we may be providing a protective environment, but very rarely do we actually have to respond with force or anything. And I remember something else Doc used to say, Doc or Anthony used to say, your job, if you end up having to defend or save your client, you failed because your job is to keep your principal out of harm's way and out of situations that could go bad. Now, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. We certainly found that out with the assassination attempt of a president, which should have never happened. I don't know how that did, but stuff's going to happen. But the lesson of your job is preventive.
Sure.
You keep your principal out of a situation where you have to go what do they call it? High speed, low drag. And I've used that term and ninja killer and all this other stuff that they used to say. If you get to the point where you have to do that, you probably failed somewhere along the way.
I don't buy into that argument. Same thing where some people say, because I'm a firearms instructor, they say, if you have to use your gun, you fail. And I don't hold that true. In fact, I fight it.
It's not an absolute.
Because we're not the Minority Report.
Right.
We don't know about pre-crime.
That's true.
You walk out of a building and somebody's holding up somebody and then they turn.
Sure.
How could you prevent that from happening? But our whole emphasis is the art of avoidance.
Yes.
And I tell folks, I know the outcome of every fight I don't get in.
Right.
And that's the goal of a protector, is not to have to fight. So you do a lot of preventive things, but you also, and the bottom line is, as a protector, there is that possibility of random crime.
Sure.
You're at a light. People don't even know who you are, but they want to carjack your car. Take that car from you. How could you prevent that? So I don't buy the notion that we've failed. And I believe that's an old wives' tale or a misnomer. Sure. But one is you do need to do everything possible to prevent that. The same thing as a firearms instructor, I have 2 emphases. Do everything humanly possible not to have to use deadly force. Everything humanly possible.
Absolutely.
It's absolute last resort, and there's no other option.
Yeah.
2, if you have to use deadly force, you got to be successful. Now, as a businessman, I'm into win-win-win. But in firearms and deadly force, no, win, lose. You are going to lose. You have to lose.
I think everybody loses in that situation. And frankly, I have a lot of friends that were combat vets, and they still to this day live with the fact that they've taken human lives. That was their job. They were justified. They were protecting their own lives and the lives of their teammates. Absolutely. But it's still a very heavy burden to carry. And I wouldn't want, it would have to be pretty extreme for me to be proud of it. And I would be proud if I literally took out, for instance, my world is active shooter. Okay.
Absolutely.
So if somebody just killed, 6 kids or 6 adults or anybody, and their intention is to continue killing, I'm not going to hesitate, and I won't feel bad about it. But I don't think we're born violent people. I think it's learned behavior, and I still don't want to be in that situation. But what's important is we're able to do it if we ever are.
And I think I do a lot of house of worship security, and I'll tell every house of worship, I said, you may not accept this, but the only way to defeat a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
100%.
And it's better to have good guys with guns and not need them than need them and not have them.
Yeah.
So every house of worship should have no less than 1 or 2 people armed, prepared. And that's the thing that makes protectors different. We're capable of using violence to counter violence.
Yeah.
And that's why, the sheepdog philosophy, where most people are like sheep, beautiful creatures, don't want to harm anybody, don't want to hurt anybody.
Right.
But there are predators out there. And so we need some folks who are the sheepdogs,
100%. And I'm sure you know Dave Grossman.
Yes.
Wonderful spirited human being. He is single-handedly responsible for me using the terms active shooter and active killer interchangeably in my book and in my training, because he got a little shitty with me about using the term active shooter, because it's true. Not always is it guns. And the analogy or the story he always said is, it's just a matter of time before some asshole takes a Molotov cocktail and throws it into a school bus full of kids. That's not a shooter, so you can't always say active shooter.
Right. I appreciate that you do use that interchangeably, and I do when I teach the Alive program, use that
That's right. It's important to state that you are a certified Alive instructor. You have been for a few years now.
Absolutely, and particularly, and I introduce it in every 7-day program. Every protector should be knowledgeable of active shooter survival, and I'm an advocate of the Alive program. I introduce that in every program. When we do our 2-day program for campus law enforcement and corporate security, I mention special event security. You need to be knowledgeable of active shooter survival. Yeah. It's a reality that we're faced with. At any given time, there could be, and like you, I don't particularly care for the active shooter, because I feel like, I'm a firearms instructor. I go to the range regularly. I would think of myself as an active shooter, but I can't because of the term, the way it's been used. So I do intermix active killer, and like you said, other types of instruments of destruction, can be used. So.
And ASIS is a big proponent of the term active assailant. So I throw that in every once in a while as well. But yeah, it's a horrible reality of the world that we're living in. And hopefully one day we'll put ourselves out of the active shooter survival training business by getting everybody prepared to where there's just so many failures they don't even consider it as an option to cope with whatever shit's going on in their lives anymore.
If the majority of people would prepare themselves and be better prepared. And that's the sad thing is you walk around, say, the streets of New York, and you see so many victims walking around because they're absorbed into their dumb phone. They're not aware of situational awareness. They have victim written all over themselves.
Now I want to go back a little bit. We talked about the fact, how long have you been a private investigator?
Since I think 2004.
Okay. I have been, I don't know how, I've been licensed for over 25 years, but I've been working as a PI for my dad for like 36 years or something like that. And I want to ask you, because you mentioned this on the topic of adoption. Have you had clients ask you to find their birth parents or birth children?
Yes.
Yeah. That is a crazy, wild situation, isn't it? And have you been successful?
No. And in fact, what I do is when people come to me, I mention how it happened with me with somebody that knew genealogy. That's an art in and of itself. That's why my friend that did it, as a hobby, she did it because every time you do it, you learn things.
Sure.
That's so unique to go that route.
Yeah.
I mean, and as an investigator, I would periodically, I'm on a database checking something, and I would put in my birth mother's name. And again, I would find people, but I couldn't make the connection.
Right.
The genealogist, she made the connection immediately.
Yeah.
And so when people do ask me, I like to find my birth family. I mentioned the genealogy. I mentioned that find somebody that's good at that, because they go about it much differently than. And one is, even though I'm a licensed investigator, I'm licensed in New York and Virginia as an investigator. I only use that for my high-end clients, basically, when, especially they have confidential matter. Sometimes they don't want to go to an outside. Jerry, I need you to run something for me. I need you to find something out. And sometimes due diligence too. So,
well, it's a really nice value add service to have with your protective clients, right?
Right.
Acquiring information that most people can't get is pretty cool. I have had a handful of experiences that I am just were really, I don't know, fulfilling and like moving. I have found a handful of adoptive children and parents, and they send me pictures of them together and the thank you card and stuff like that. But what I learned that I didn't know before this, which you have not experienced, and I'm very happy for you, is there are many people who it's like a piece of the puzzle of their life that is missing, and they wonder, and they're thinking to the children are like, well, why did they give me up? Well, it's probably because they weren't ready to be a parent. They would have been a bad parent, right?
That's right.
And parents are like, oh my God, was this a mistake? And so I learned that some people really struggle and have a hard time with that. And I've become very, very compassionate and sensitive to that because I've never experienced that myself. I've had plenty of other mommy and daddy issues, but not that. And so that was a pretty cool thing to be able to help reunite people like that. And most of the time it's been a very good thing, but it isn't always. Sometimes you're very disappointed when you find out where you came from.
Interesting enough, after I met my blood family on my birth mother's side, my half sister and my half brother, we did ancestry.com and it got all connected. In fact, my half brother's daughter said, "Hey, just to confirm, Jerry is my uncle," because through the blood lineage or DNA.
Yeah.
I was contacted by a sibling or a child of a possible sibling. And I told them the experience I had was wonderful. But after a while, they cut off. And I think he said his father was adopted. And my half sister and I think that my birth mother had another child that was put up for adoption. I told him how wonderful it was to meet. I have cousins now and things like that. But he just cut off. And I have a feeling that maybe when he approached his birth father, maybe they got turned off. So they shut it down. But I think it's wonderful, and and when it happened, like I said, it happened within 2 weeks. My half sister and I, we felt very spiritual. I'm kind of a spiritualist, and I feel that it was meant to be at that time.
Absolutely, I love that. Well, I had one scenario early on, probably 23 years ago, where it was actually for a friend of mine, a guy that was like my Harley mechanic. He built the Harley Davidson I had. He would wrench on it, stuff like that. He goes, "Hey, listen, man, I'm just kind of curious. I know you're a PI, blah, 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 blah. Here's the situation. My mom literally had a one-night stand with the captain of a cargo ship and boom, 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 whatever, like crazy scenario. So I got all the information, the boat name and all this stuff, and was able to actually whittle it down to this guy and in Hawaii. So I sent I can't remember if I sent a letter or whatever I did. Oh no, I made a phone. I got the number and I called and I got a hold of a woman and it was the guy's girlfriend. And she said, "Yes, that's him. He just died a month ago."
Oh, gosh.
However, he's got this huge family. So this huge family is now my buddy Ken's family that he didn't know he had. He didn't know it existed. He went to Hawaii. He met with all of them. So although that was probably kind of a bummer, he has a whole huge family now that he never knew he had before. Like you've got now family. How cool is that to suddenly have a bigger family than you thought you had. That's kind of neat, I think, right?
No, absolutely. For a little while after I met my half sister and my half brother, we knew that we were blood related, but we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
But over time, that's been a number of years now. When my daughter got married a year ago, my half sister came, my half brother came, and we had like a mini reunion. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And we've gotten to know each other. Now, my adopted parents are my mom and dad.
Yes.
And I always distinguish my mom and dad and then my birth mother.
Sure.
Which I didn't know, but I didn't have any anxiety towards her. And thank God I was born.
Yeah.
She didn't abort me, so I was pleased with that. And I don't know the circumstances, being a single mother with a child in the 50s or something like that.
Might have been the best thing in the world for you.
I'm sure it was difficult.
Sure.
So like I said, I didn't have any anxiety about it. I felt there must have been some reason. My sister also didn't have any bad feelings. She grew up with a sister, I think, who was also adopted, and her parents. When we met each other, it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it's become kind of cool. So, and I think it's really wonderful. And I think folks, if there is that emptiness, they should try to seek it out.
Sure.
But they need to be prepared, because
Yes.
there could be all sorts of, difficulty, or people may be like, I don't want to know. A good friend of mine recently got a phone call, and he said, I think you're my dad. And then it went back to a relationship that he had. But now he's got a boy. He's got a son.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad he was open to that, because I've given that stuff before, and the person went, and the parent didn't want them in their life. And that felt kind of shitty. I felt a little guilty that I was able to find them.
For me, it is what it is. Whatever brought it about, it happened. Yeah. And you can't undo that.
No.
So, and my encouragement for people, get over it. It is what it is. Yeah. Embrace it, accept it. My friend came to me. He's the first person he talked to. He said, Jerry, I got this phone call. And I said, how exciting. It's so cool. Go with it. Make a relationship.
Yes. That's great. That is great. Hi, everybody. As you know, I'm Michael Julian, and I'm the creator and founder of the Alive Active Shooter Survival Training Method and Program. And Alive is today's sponsor for my podcast. So Alive is an acronym. It stands for Assess, Leave, Impede, Violence, and Expose. It is Run, Hide, Fight 2.0, the new and improved method. We have certified over 290 instructors in 6 countries, and we're certifying new ones every month. If you are interested in becoming a certified instructor of the Alive Active Shooter Survival Training Method, please reach out. We'll give you all the information you need, and we have a class at the end of every month. We would love to have you in our 2-day course, and then have you out there teaching the world the best way to survive an active shooter. And as a sponsor of the show today, if you call and would like to either get the active shooter training, or you want to become an instructor, mention my podcast, Down and Dirty with Michael Julian, and we'll give you a 10% discount on either way you want it. Thanks for staying tuned, and we'll see you soon. All right, so let's get back. We didn't finish the story about how you ended up owning one of the biggest and oldest EP schools on the planet. So how did that come about?
Well, I think, as you know, and you mentioned Anthony Christiani, he was generally, when I came into the fold, I saw him as the heir apparent.
Yes.
Respected him. And then he was hit. When I met him, he was a lieutenant in the Gretna Police Department, became a major, captain, a major, eventually deputy chief. But then Katrina hit there, and that really impacted him in so many different ways. And when it got time that Doc was looking at handing it off, I think Anthony wasn't ready to receive it. Mm-hmm. And so for a while, Doc was floating different ideas around. He spoke to a number of people, and someone said, hey, Jerry, you should talk to Doc because it's not going to work out with Anthony. So I asked Doc, is there anything I can do? And he said, well, let's think about it. I still want to confirm whether it's going to work with Anthony or not. And eventually he said, it's not going to work out. And I I made a proposal. I said, would you want me to do something? He said, well, what are you thinking? And I looked at the numbers, and then I used some multipliers in my own way, and I made a proposal, and Doug said, okay.
Yeah.
So it was a 3-year plan. I became officially the owner in 2009. But over the next 3 years, and based on my understanding of how things didn't work with Anthony, I was able to kind of toe the line a little bit, make sure I was respectful for Doc.
Sure.
Honestly, he was a pioneer. Amazing. He was, Chicago PD. Then he became on the mayor's detail. No formal training. And what Doc said, the training was he was introduced to the mayor, who was Mayor Daley, Elder Daley. He said, where are you from? What's your heritage? He was Polish. And he said, okay, don't put your hands on a voter unless you need to protect me or yourself.
Right.
Have a good day. That was the training.
Right.
And then he realized to go from a beat cop in Chicago to become, go to high society meetings and things like that, he had to learn how to dress.
Etiquette.
Which
you teach at EPI, which I never knew anything about until I went to EPI and found out that there's a thing called etiquette.
Sure. So that was, and being a pioneer, and then he was with the IACP, began to teach a program of executive protection. The first couple classes were actually kind of a joint class between IACP and EPI.
IAPC, International Association of Police Chiefs.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Chiefs of Police, IACP.
Oh, Chiefs of Police. Okay. Sorry. My
IACP.
bad.
Yeah,
My
right.
bad.
He realized there was no available schools for the private sector.
Yeah.
And so he left the IACP, started EPI in 1978. Now again, I was really unprepared. Now I owned an agency in New York City. And as guard agencies, you make pennies on the dollar, basically.
Yeah, I do.
Wasn't really prepared to take over the ownership. And I'll tell you a short story, which kind of goes into my encouragement for people to be on how to be successful. There were people asking me, well, when Anthony takes it over, you're going to stay with the Institute. And I said, well, if Anthony will have me,
sure.
He knows me. And but sometimes people would ask me, why does Doc do this? Why does Doc do that? And I'm like, well, it's his school. It's his school. But at one point that resonated in me. And I thought, wait a minute. I have to have some sense of ownership. I'm part of this. I have to feel like it's my school.
Yeah.
So I began to take ownership in the sense that I'm an instructor for Doc. I'm part of the Institute. So when people would say, Jerry, why does Doc do this? So I would go to Doc and say, Doc, people are asking me, why do you do this? And he would be like, well, what do you recommend? And I would, well, I'm thinking about it. We should do this. He'd go, okay, let's do that.
That's
so
cool.
I began to have kind of an impact.
Sure.
But also in my heart, I had some feeling of ownership, I have to feel like I'm a part of it.
You were invested in it too.
And honestly,
not monetarily, you were invested emotionally and you cared about that.
That's right. And then when the door opened, I felt like I had earned that by, in a way, internally taking ownership. And my philosophy too is if you work for somebody, you have to feel like you're a part of, like somebody that works for your business.
Yeah.
They're representing your business. They have to feel like a part of it. They can't be separate from it. Well, it's Mike's company.
Sure.
No, they have to feel like, hey, I'm a part of this. I represent this. And that's taking, in a way, ownership. Not that they're going to take the ownership from you. Yeah. But
well, if you don't mind, I just want to mention some of your people because you've got such good people. Gene Ferrara obviously has been there forever. He's an extraordinary human being, great guy.
Only instructor he's the last instructor standing. He has been in class 1.
Yep.
And we just completed class 93. We're getting ready for 94. So, and I told him in the fine print, you're part of this school.
Yes.
And you're going to stay here until he realizes he can't. But phenomenal. And what a wonderful guy.
He is. He's a wonderful human being.
He has taught me so much. Very often when I would have a difficulty, I would talk to him, and he has a lot of sayings.
Yes, he does.
I was struggling with a point, and he said, Jerry, we have a rear view mirror. It's to see what was behind, but the windshield's bigger.
Yeah.
So look forward.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And then we mentioned Sonny and Anthony. John Musser, one of the scariest people I've ever met back in the day. Now I think he's just a super great guy, but he wouldn't smile. I think I've seen him smile once now. He's a interesting guy. I remember when he was building his place out and he had this like survival dungeon and all this other crazy stuff.
Man cave. Yeah.
He's a prepper for sure. He's a hell of a guy. And then some of your staff, let's talk about Anna and all your people, your support people are so great to make this thing work because we're only as good as the people that are helping us be good, right?
Sure. Funny story. I put an ad for a part-time firearms instructor and I got about 20 resumes and my staff said, there's a guy on the phone. He wants to talk to you. And I'm like, I'm not ready to talk to anybody yet. Guy's on the phone. Finally, they said, he's out here. So I'm like, what a pest.
Yeah.
Well, let me see him.
Good for him.
So he comes in the office. He was a sergeant at Midtown South. So he and I knew a lot of the same people. He knew Jerry Glazebrook. I knew Jerry Glazebrook, Tony Scotti. When he left my office, I got on the phone and called some people. Hey, you know this guy? When he got out of the hallway, he did the same thing. Hey, I just met this guy, Jerry Hine. You know him. Well, after I hired him, and I told him, I think I need you for a bigger job than just a part-time firearms sector. I ended up hiring him as my vice president, former NYPD, which, my token NYPD guy.
Yes.
He said, you got to meet Tony Alfonso.
Yep.
He was his driver and then eventually became a sergeant. He said, you got to meet him. You got to meet him. So when Tony came, he brought his wife, Anna.
Yep.
Well, I hired Anna. I tell people, I got introduced to Tony, but I hired Anna. Tony was still on the job. He's with me here at ATAB.
I'm looking forward to seeing him tomorrow. He's such a good dude. I mean, I think he just makes everybody feel special and appreciated, which who doesn't want to feel that way, right?
He has a unique teaching style.
Yeah.
Recently, some guests came and they said, oh my God, if he was one of my high school teachers, I would have, my whole attitude would have changed. And something that you brought up earlier, for a lot of people, when they come to the 7-day program, it's one of the highlights of their life. Yeah. It's a memorable experience.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I'm still friends to this day with Chris Just, who was we were just put in the same room in the motel when we went through that together. And we're still great friends to this day and helped each other and given each other work. And I mean, it was a great experience. Sorry to interrupt. I get excited.
I just saw him at a conference in June.
Yeah.
And similar things. Many people, once they have that experience, they stay connected.
Yep.
Which kind of goes into the NLA too, the 9 Lives Associates.
Yes, I want to talk about NLA, 9 Lives Associates. Now, this is the little fraternity. Oh, and we can't not mention Jessica. She's wonderful. And Jessica and I were the recipients of the very first Dr. Richard Kovitz, I don't know, what is it, Lifetime Achievement or some kind of achievement award?
Right.
The first time you gave those out, Jessica and I we were 2 people that got that, which was a pretty big deal to me. I thought that was pretty awesome.
And think about this. When Doc formed the school in 1978, he created an alumni immediately, the 9 Lives Associates.
Yeah.
And, 9 lives, protectors, we lose a life sometimes. So, walking across the sidewalk, all of a sudden, there went another life. And the NLA is very big. Now, when Doc and I talked about me taking over the school, I told him, Doc, I have 3 concerns. Number 1 is your legacy.
Yeah.
You did something phenomenal here. He was a pioneer. He was a visionary.
Yes.
Because he created a personal protection specialist, and he wanted people not to be ordinary bodyguards, but a higher level personal protection specialist.
Yep.
2, he created the 9 Lives Associates, the fraternity. And then what I told him, I said, he might find a buyer, some corporation might buy the school, but if it doesn't work out, they'll shelve it.
Sure.
And I don't think they would have cared about the fraternity, the 9 Lives Associates. So I said, Doc, I want to honor your legacy, carry it forward. 2, want to keep the NLA going and also keep the school going. How would you feel like you're a graduate of the school that no longer exists?
Yeah.
So I felt honored to be able to, not just purchase the school, but to carry on the legacy of EPI and the NLA and keep that fraternity and the alumni going.
Yeah, it's super important. And as a member, I can't, I wear we're the black cats, right? It's the Halloween black cat with its backup, which I always thought was kind of a silly thing, but it's cool.
We softened it up a little bit.
I'm glad, because that scaredy cat was not a good representation of some badasses who were supposed to be protecting people. But I would wear my pin to conferences, and it would be a conversation starter because somebody else would have their pin on, and we'd immediately be brothers, right? Or sisters, brother and sister, because there'd be a gal with it on her lapel or something like that. So, and I know that if somebody's got that pin or they're a member of the NLA, they had a great training, the same training I've had,
Sure.
And I will have no reservation about considering them to hire them or as a subcontractor or whatever, because I know they got trained well.
And that's a beauty of the NLA, that fraternity is we recognize the level of training, also the pledge that NLA members have to have integrity,
Mm-hmm.
to honor that. And if an NLA member were to cause harm to somebody
Mm-hmm.
and they filed a complaint, we would investigate. And if we felt somebody breached that ethics, they'll be removed.
Blow them out.
Now, thankfully, it rarely happens, but on occasion it does happen.
Yeah.
And we have to notify somebody you're no longer an NLA member
Yep.
because you breached that code of ethics. So,
And I'm glad that you police your own, because I remember somebody that shouldn't have been in. I don't want them attached to my name and my reputation and my brother and sisterhood or whatever of the NLA. And that person needed to get booted. I'm glad they did. Now, I want to talk about something else you did really quick. We used to have Doc, and you guys had annual conferences. Then you decided to actually make it like it wasn't just an NLA conference, and you called it EPIC. What did EPIC stand for?
Executive Protection International Conference.
Okay. So I don't know if there was any other EP conference anywhere in the world. If there was, I didn't know about it. So you guys were, at least in America, kind of the first.
Well, a couple of things that happened. One is the annual conference, the NLA annual conference. It was difficult, and I didn't realize that Doc was mentoring me, unbeknownst to me. And of course, I think he mentored a lot of people.
Yeah.
But every time I would be around Doc, he would always pull me aside, and we would spend some time. And looking back, he was mentoring me. But I also saw that the annual conference is not an easy thing to do.
No.
So when I took over the ownership in 2009, the conference was already scheduled. And I asked Doc, can we open it to the public? And he was like, no, I don't think so. I said, well, can we invite guests? He said, okay. So I went on social media and I said, you want to be my guest?
Yeah.
Well, we had a large gathering. And
Where was it that year?
In Winchester.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of people said, Winchester, is it going to be fun? It snowed. It was great. Everybody had a great time.
Yeah.
I was asked to be put in charge of the program, so I invited a lot of good speakers. Doc said, geez, Jerry, this is the best conference we ever had. And I said, Doc, I got to open this public because of 2 reasons. One is I saw him lose money on some conferences because, you have to make guarantees with hotels, room blocks, number of attendees and things like that. And I thought, I can't afford to carry a conference. So that's when I created EPIC. And Doc said, Jerry, don't lose the NLA. So I said, Doc, we'll always have an NLA gathering at the conference.
Right.
So when we created EPIC, and there was another conference, a competing school, ESI, had an annual conference in August. Now theirs was open to the public. It started out for them alumni, and then they opened to the public. And in 2009, about 15 NLA members went to that conference in August. We had a great time. And then when we had our conference in December, the first EPIC, about 15 ESI grads came. And we felt a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah. I think I was there that very first year. And there's a lot of great guys and gals that I work with and worked for me and that we work for out of ESI as well.
Well, think about this. Years ago, there was, competition.
Sure, there was. You were the two big ones, and then Open came along, but he was smaller. But you were it. You guys were the biggest, most. I mean, people came from other countries to go to your schools.
We like to say we taught Bob well because he does a 7-day in May and October, and I'm not sure where he got that from, but I've known Bob for years.
Yeah, great guy. Bob Open's he's a good man.
And for a while, it was always the top three: EPI, ESI, Oatman. Now, say you're an EPI graduate, you go to interview for a job, maybe an assignment, and it's an ESI grad. They might be like, "Oh, you're from EPI, okay."
Yeah.
By partnering, and so actually in 2009, I talked to Bob Dugan, and I checked with Doc first to make sure. Doc,
sure.
Some folks want me to talk to Bob, and oh yeah, okay. And we talked for like 2 hours. And Bob's kind of an old hippie, and I'm an old hippie, and
Bob Dugan is definitely an old hippie.
It was funny. At the end of the conversation, he said, "Oh my God, Jerry, we should have had this call 15 years ago."
Absolutely.
And I said it wasn't possible. I said, "You created, Doc created EPI in 1978. He created ESI in 1980." And, competing schools, different philosophies. He was a Marxist radical, and Doc was a cop's cop, and
sure.
Like that, different worlds.
Yep.
Created these schools. But I said, now by bringing the two conferences together, now you have ESI grads and EPI grads and other folks coming together. So now when you go to say an interview, an EPI grad goes and there's an ESI, hey, you're at the last conference.
Yeah.
Because you're a graduate of a different school. Even we jokingly said we should have a football team like Army versus Navy.
That would be hilarious.
So we talked, and then we already had our next conference, the 30th, planned for Orlando. So we agreed we would merge. The two schools would have EPIC come together 2009, 2000. So 2011, we had our first joint conference. And the conference grew and grew and grew.
Yeah.
And they liked the idea because they were having theirs in August, and it's not easy putting on conferences.
No.
And by alternating every other year, it eased the burden of carrying that conference. But, from 2009 having 85 people, in 2010 we had 105.
Yeah, and I think 2 years ago you had over 800 attendees from around the world.
Well, what happened is after I created EPIC in 2009, and then we merged 2 years later, and we had 4 EPICs. And I think in 2015, we had just under 400 people.
Yeah.
And I was approached by several people, Christian West and Chuck Randolph, and they were encouraged by Bob because Bob didn't want to do it anymore. Mm. And they said, hey, it's gotten big now. It's beyond 2 schools, alumni having a conference. And I couldn't disagree. Part of me was, I created that EPIC and I was pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
And it was pretty a cool thing. In January of 2016, we got together. We created the IPSB.
International Protective Security Board.
Right. And there were six founding board members. And it was so funny. I said, okay, folks, you got no money. You got no experience. And now you're going to have an annual conference.
Yeah.
And we did. And I think the first conference was like 450 in 2016. The next conference got bigger. Of course, one year we had to let it go by because of COVID. But 2 years ago it was 800. Last year was the first time we moved out of Vegas. And so the conference went down a little bit. It was a little different format.
Yep.
And there was a lot going on at that time too. The economy also. So I think we were about 700, 750 or something like that.
And it's in December first or second week in December every year. This year it's December 9th through the 11th, and it's in Nashville.
Correct.
Which is one of my girlfriend's favorite cities, and I love it too. And my sister lives out there, so I can't wait for that one.
No, it's it's grown. I'm proud to have been a part of it, a founding board member of the IPSB, also to have created Epic, and that merged into the IPSB.
Yep.
I think that's a pretty cool thing. I actually left the active board, and now I'm on the founders board.
Yeah.
And the idea too is that board positions are kind of limited, so people don't get there in perpetuity. Right now, Chuck Tobin is the president. He'll be president for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Chuck Randolph was the past president. And Chuck, as you know, is a big part of ATAP.
Oh, yeah.
And was, I think,
Chuck Tobin.
Instrumental in growing ATAP,
Mm-hmm.
where now they have 1,000 people. They cap it at 1,000
Yeah,
people.
we're sold out every single year, and I will not miss that. Man, that is the best. I'll tell you. Like I said, I'm the dumbest person in every conversation. They're some big thinkers, and I'm so looking forward to that conference and seeing you there for the next couple of days. Okay, so IPSB in December, we will have an NLA gathering there, correct?
Correct.
I will have an Alive certified instructor gathering, as I do every year at IPSB. So that's pretty neat. You're going to be at GSX next month in Orlando.
Right.
I too will be there. Looking forward to that. That's always a crazy, crazy conference. A little too big, a little bit too much for me. Let me just, before, I also want to mention, and I keep forgetting, you're a sponsor of this podcast, EPI is. And if anybody wants to go to the 7-day by mentioning the podcast, Down and Dirty with Michael Julian, or the Alive Active Shooter program, they'll get $250 off the tuition.
Correct.
So I think that's important because there's going to be a lot of people. Listen, anybody that ever says, what advice can you give me if I want to get into this industry? 2 things. First of all, make sure you know what this industry is, not based on television and movies. And 2, take some formal EP training, because it was a world of difference for me to realize how little I actually knew.
Absolutely.
But if you mention the podcast or my live program, of which you're a certified instructor, you get $250 off. Now, I want to ask you something along those lines. What would you tell? It doesn't have. Doesn't have to be about a security or EP. This is life. What would you tell a young person, or anybody for that matter? What advice, based on your experience and your wisdom, would you give somebody that you would want them to take from you or from anywhere to enrich their life, like you took Think and Grow Rich and a couple other philosophies and people that you spoke to that gave you pearls of wisdom that helped form you into the human being you are today?
Well, one is the Think and Grow Rich. Besides reading the book and adopting that positive mentality, and there's a lot of positive thinking type books.
Yeah.
What I call the Think and Grow Rich, it's like GPS for your career.
Mm-hmm.
You have to see in your mind's eye. In fact, one of Napoleon Hill's, sayings is, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve.
Yep.
You have to see your success in your mind's eye. You have to see yourself doing that. And the funny thing you mentioned, we've had a number of graduates, when they graduate from the program, they realize this is not the career I wanted.
That is very true. And it's a good thing to realize now.
But the money wasn't wasted, because it helps you in life.
Absolutely.
And we've had quite a number of people come through envisioning that it's what they want to do, and maybe they gravitate. And I kind of equate it to, say, someone wants to be an actor. What do? They go to acting school. Then you pick the best acting school. There's choices. When you graduate from acting school, what do? Well, you have to audition. You have to get bit parts, and you'll be the third cowboy in the right without even a line.
Yep.
And if you do that well, then you'd be the second cowboy in the left, and you have a line that says, "Let's ride." And if you do that well, then you get a little more. The same consideration in executive protection is, you graduate from the program. Now you have to prove yourself. You have to get some bit parts. It might be on the outer perimeter. You might be on halls and walls, as we say. And you have to be on time, properly dressed, with the right attitude.
Yeah.
And it's sad. I've had some really qualified people who are great agents, but if they can't be on time, properly dressed, with the right attitude,
They're the wrong people.
they're going to lose the opportunity.
That's right.
So kind of GPS. if right now we say, okay, let's go to Chicago, what are we going to do? We're going to map it out, and there's a route. So part of in our life, if you want to be successful or you want to do something, you have to map that out. You have to look at, okay, I'm here, I need to get here. What do I have to do for that? So you have to see yourself gaining experience and building that reputation. One thing I encourage people, I call it F2F, face to face. I'm more likely to hire somebody that's met me and I got to see as a person than a resume. I have no idea. Oh, wow, look at this resume. Oh, and I tell people, I want a resume bullshit detector. I can take that resume.
Yep.
Oh, bullshit.
Yep.
This guy said he did this. No, he did not do that. Oh, you work for so-and-so? Hey, Charlie, did this guy work for you? Oh, he didn't. Yeah, okay. I didn't think so either. And I tell people, be honest, be truthful. If you are limited experience or you're new in the industry, there's no shame in that.
Nope.
Absolutely no shame in that. When you go to conferences, don't walk around with your resume. Don't try to impress people. You're not going to impress me. You know, and not to say I'm somebody, but I've been around a long time. A lot of people said, oh, Jerry, you know this guy, you know that guy? Yeah, I'm old. Okay. I've been around.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been around, they say. But I want to know who you are as a person. You know, are you a family guy? And what's your hobbies? Things like that. What's your personality? Because I try to match, you know, there's a company, you know, called eharmony.com. I believe in epharmony.com.
I love that.
You know, can't use it probably because it's too close to eHarmony, but I try to fit the right person in with the right detail. There are times where, you know, my company, a lot of people work for me. Hey, Jerry, how come you didn't use me on that detail? You weren't the right fit.
Yeah.
It's nothing against you. I had to find the right person for the right, you know, fit. We take care of billionaires, got to place the right person in there. So that EP harmony. But part of that comes from my knowledge of getting to know somebody face to face. You know, what kind of person are they? Had a wealthy woman who was an author, had a problem. One of her protectors fell in love with her.
Oh, boy.
And so she was very concerned. And I told her, I have the right person for you. Just got married, just had a child, madly in love with his wife. He's not going to hit on you. And I told her that wasn't her problem because she said, Jerry, did I do something wrong? No, he crossed the line on professional ethics.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to have that line there. You know, now there are some success stories where the bodyguard fell in love and they got married and lived happily ever after. But at a certain
that's
point,
the exception, not the rule.
They have to step back.
Yeah.
And they can't do that anymore. But I placed somebody with this author and she called me up, oh, Jerry, this guy is great. And he worked for her for a number of years till situation changed, but he was a perfect fit for her. And, you know, and I have pretty good success with that, I think, too.
That's good.
I'm kind of a people person. I like to get to know people.
You are.
I like everybody. Even some people are, you know, they're not the best humans maybe, but I get along with most anybody.
You are a pretty nice guy and you do stay neutral and you don't get involved in the BS. And there's even some people I've seen, I know one situation when somebody attacked you and went after you and everybody was looking at them going, okay, you just lost all credibility because Jerry's the nicest human being in the world and you just attacked him. And everybody, they just cut their own throat. I mean, it's like everybody knows you're a nice guy and you don't take sides. You don't get, you don't get political, or at least you have your opinions, but you don't make anybody feel bad for any way that they believe. So anybody that goes after you is clearly a dummy and they lose their credibility. But that's okay. That's how we learn who not to use.
I think in today's world also, I was on a virtual meeting recently for the Washington, D.C. ASIS chapter. And we're talking about diversity, you know, equity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm old school. I grew up, my father, speak when spoken to.
Yep.
And, you know, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. Then there's new school, then there's new age. Mm-hmm. We're in the new age. You have to adapt to the world. As a business owner, you know, you can't have discrimination.
No.
every time I was accused of discrimination in my company, we won because we crossed the T's, we dotted the
Sure.
I's. You have to be careful in today's age. The age is what it is. We don't have control over that. So you have to somewhat be neutral. Again, I'm a family man. I have my own kind of philosophy. I'm a spiritualist. I have spiritual beliefs and things like that. But I have to be careful. I can't openly share that in the work environment. I can't be critical of some different people, of how they stand, how they live their lives, what political party they're a part of.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I try to make sure that I'm easygoing with everybody. I embrace everybody, no matter what their beliefs are. There are lines. When somebody's doing something, say criminally or something, I can't be a part of that.
Sure.
But or serious
immoral,
yeah, and I'm not going to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say sorry, goodbye.
Yep.
And I've walked away from some clients too. I will not be party to something I don't, or I believe is very harmful. So,
well, you have your own code that you want to live by and live in, and if it crosses that, then it's best to just separate yourself, and that's okay.
That's right. But I think in today's age, to be successful, you have to be embracing of people. I try to look beyond things that I might not agree with and think, well, they have freedom. That person has freedom to believe what they want to believe or to do things. I'm not going to disrespect them as a human. I'm going to try to give my love in a way towards them.
Sure.
And that's my philosophy.
I love it.
So again, I think that success pattern is mapping it out. And sometimes you're going on that path and all of a sudden you start heading off and you think, geez, am I veering off path? But then it brings you back around. You realize I needed that experience.
Sure. Absolutely. That was one of those stops in your journey that probably influenced the rest of it. Well, to get a hold of you, it's personalprotection.com. That's the website. Has been forever, never, never. Personalprotection.com. If you want to sign up for the 7-day, you get $250 off. If you mention Down and Dirty with Michael Julian or the Alive Active Shooter survival training program.
That's correct.
And Jared, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. It's been great to spend this time together. Normally, we're always so busy at conferences, we don't get to normally sit down and shoot the shit for more than about 5 minutes. So
That's true,
this has been great. And I'm looking forward to seeing you over the next couple of days at the ATAP conference. And then again at GSX in Orlando, and then again at IPSB in Nashville in December. That's going to be a good one. Absolutely. So my friend, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you. I appreciate all you do. You have a phenomenal school. Anybody that's thinking about getting into this industry, damn well better consider EPI. In my opinion, not just because that I was a graduate 21 years ago or whatever it was. It is one of the best out there, if not the best, because of the lessons that I learned, the people I met, the relationships I've maintained since that time. I just can't imagine. I wouldn't be here today if it was not for EPI. I would be some other place. I'd probably not as good. Definitely, I don't think better, but it helped shape my career in the executive protection world.
We have a lot of folks that have been to other schools, and one of my encouragement is, hey, when are you coming to EPI?
Yeah.
You went to this school,
yes.
You went to that school. When are you coming to EPI?
And you know what? I encourage people to go to multiple. I've been to, I've taken and audited different things for ESI, Byron. I haven't done anything with Joe LaSorsa yet, but I love the guy and I'd love to see what he's got going on.
Sure.
I think you're going to be more well-rounded if you get a taste from different schools and thought processes and stuff, because you might get a pearl of wisdom there and a pearl of wisdom there, and you'll be more complete and your stock goes up. You'll be more in demand.
Absolutely.
And more wise and more experienced and only do better in this industry.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, brother.
All right.
Until next time, please connect with me on your favorite social media platform where you can follow me on my personal journey, including the fun stuff I do with people close to me to celebrate our lives and our victories.